Hello and welcome to another video. As you know, if you live here in the UK, we've just entered into a new 4-week lockdown. This means the likes of pubs, clubs, bars, restaurants, gyms and certain shops are all closed for the next 4 weeks to stop the spread of the virus. This is obviously to protect the health of the population. However, the financial health of the population is a concern. So in this video, I'm going to break down my top 5 tips so you can get through the next lockdown and not impact your financial health. So let's get going with the video. So as always, before we get going with the video, please make sure that you hit that like button and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any further videos. So now that we've entered lockdown, it means that a number of people might be out of work or furloughed, which is a term we all didn't know at the start of the year. This can be a big financial worry for a number of people who don't know when they're actually going to go back to work or if there will be a job for them when they come back. This also means that people aren't going to spend as much money in shops as they used to, which means that shops can't afford to employ as many people or can't afford to pay rent. So here are my 5 top tips to help you get through these next 4 weeks, which fingers crossed are only 4 weeks. But as we know with the last lockdown, which was only meant to last 2 weeks and instead lasted over 3 months, this could be a long period of time. So in at number 1, cash is king. So if you've watched any of my videos, any personal finance videos, everyone will tell you that before you get to investing or even just setting yourself to be financially safe, you should have an emergency fund. And this goes without saying is so important during this time. An emergency fund is 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, which is there for you when you need it. This is a bit like your mom's best china, which is saving for that day that the Queen comes round for lunch. It's there in the cupboard, but don't touch it until you actually need it. And during this time, depending on your financial situation, you may or may not need it, but it doesn't matter. An emergency fund is there for when it's emergency. If you knew when emergencies happen, then they wouldn't be emergencies. Having that emergency fund there is perfect for when expenses come along and you're not expecting them, which can happen at any time. You could lose your job, your car could break down, the boiler could break. All these things cost money. You don't want to be put under that pressure if you've just been furloughed or you're worried about your job. So obviously saving between 3 to 6 months of expenses can seem like a daunting task. However, we're right now in November with Christmas coming, New Year. If you were to lose your job, it would probably take at least 3 months to find a new one. But having that money sat there in a separate account so you can draw it down as and when you need to will be a great stress reliever. Obviously, the 3 to 6 months amount of cash is just a guideline. It obviously depends on each person's individual circumstances. If you work in a particularly strong sector which is going to be here and is particularly unaffected by the pandemic, then you might only need 3 months of expenses. However, as we've seen recently with job cuts in the likes of Sainsbury's and Rolls-Royce, that no job in any sector is actually safe. So it's always sensible to have a minimum of at least 3 months. Next up at number 2, we have don't rely on investments. A number of people watching this may think that cash is a waste of time, and instead of having their money in a bank account ready for when they need it as an emergency fund, they might just invest all their money and think that when they need money, they'll just sell some shares in a company and use that money as their emergency fund. Now, these people you could describe as asset rich and cash poor. They have lots of assets which make them money, which is great. However, when you need them most, may be the worst time to sell. Right now, as we go through the pandemic, stock markets and asset prices are so volatile, meaning that one day your asset price can be really high and the next it can be really low. If we just use the example back in March, the stock market dropped significantly. If you hold most of your money in stock market assets, then you would have lost a significant portion of your net wealth. This just means that when you sold that investment as you needed the money, you had far less money than you thought you did originally. Being forced to sell your investments is not a great position to be in. It means that you're selling at the wrong time, which means you can get possibly the worst price. Saving and selling when you want to is obviously the best strategy. And selling at the wrong time can really impact your long-term financial wealth. Any money that you have to invest, you should only invest for a minimum of 5 years. Therefore, taking money out in the short term can really impact your long-term financial goals. So really don't look at that money as being your emergency fund. Have a separate emergency fund and invest the rest and leave it for the long term. In at number 3, we have cutting back on your expenses. Right now, if you're working from home, then you're probably cutting back on your travel charges. You also can't go to the gym, so freeze that membership. You're also not spending money frivolously eating out or eating at bars as they're all closed. So you're already saving money that way. But you might have other things which are sapping your money, such as expensive subscriptions. So really make sure that you look through how much money you've spent in the last month or so and cut out any subscriptions that you don't use. But whilst I'm saying cut back on expenses, just make sure that you understand what's important to you. Listening to music on a daily basis might make you feel uplifted and make you feel good. So paying for that Spotify subscription every month might just be fine and is something which is really important to you. Just remember, don't cut back so hard that you're living in the dark with no lighting and no entertainment. Whilst your financial health is super important, your mental and physical health are just as important. So really bear those in mind whilst cutting back on all your expenses. And point number 4 is not using debt. Now, having enough money can be particularly scary. However, putting that money onto a credit card and making it tomorrow's problem can be even more scary. That is because credit cards are a very expensive form of debt. Now, if you can't afford something, then don't buy it. And I appreciate right now, money could be tight. However, if you follow the previous tips of having an emergency fund and cutting back on your expenses, then hopefully you won't be pushed into debt. And also, whilst you don't think you have to pay that money back immediately, you still need to pay it back. This can put you under more financial pressure going into the future. And debt can be a slippery slope, meaning that the more debt that you have and the more debt that you can't pay means that you might draw down more debt and end up in a bigger and bigger debt spiral, which is not a fun place for anyone to be. And taking out debt and not paying it back can lead to longer term consequences, meaning that you can't get a mortgage for a house or you can't get a loan when you need it for, say, building works or to open a business. This can really impact your financial health. So really try and live within your means. Don't try and put things on a credit card and think, oh, hey, I'm going to pay it later, because it'll just put you more and more under pressure in the future. Just think, do you really need to spend that money? And do you really need to spend it now? And if you do put things on a credit card, just make sure that you pay it off in full each and every month, so you're not stung by huge interest charges. And finally, in at number 5, it's get help. Don't be too proud, no matter what your circumstance, to ask for help. Help can be provided in many forms, and I'll put a link below to a great article from the money saving expert, Martin Lewis, who will help you understand what help you can get if you're in a really bad situation. This situation is unknown to everyone. However, the government and your banks are meant to be helping you. So if you can't pay rent, speak to your landlord. If you can't pay your mortgage, speak to your bank. If you can't pay your credit card, speak to your credit card provider. You need to understand there are many people just like you who have unfortunately lost jobs, and it's not your fault. So just go and ask for help, as it's so important. The last thing you want to do is seek out more debt or be under pressure, really impacting your life going forward. However, it's never nice being under financial pressure. However, there are ways in which companies and governments can help you out. So please check out that article from money saving expert Martin Lewis and really get some help if you need it. And finally, as a bonus point, invest. This might sound odd, as I've told you to have an emergency fund, cut back on expenses. However, there are some people who are fortunate enough to be in the position they have a significant emergency fund, they have a stable job, they don't have any debts. And those people are investing regularly. And if you're one of those people, then invest. Now might be a great time to invest. As the great Warren Buffett says, be fearful while others are greedy, and greedy whilst others are fearful. If you just look back at the stock market back in March, it dropped significantly and has since rebounded. Back in March, if you were really scared like everyone else was and you sold out, then that could have been catastrophic. However, if you thought logically and held on long term and used that as a buying opportunity, you would have made significant gains. So if you're in that position to invest, look out for those companies, look out for that stock market index which might drop, and use that as a buying opportunity. However, if you're investing monthly and putting that money away automatically, then don't stop. If you can keep paying it, then it's great. You'll be able to buy more financial assets as the stock market goes down. Now, I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and I hope it's given you some good, useful tips so you can get through the next 4 weeks, or even longer, who knows. I hope these tips help you protect your financial health in a time where we're protecting our own personal health. Make sure that you're looking after both your mental, physical, and your financial health during this time. As always, before you go, please make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.